We're continuing on Hilchot Shabbat, and we're starting the melacha of kosher umatir, tying and untying, tying shoes, tying pajamas. You know, what can you tightening your tzitziot, all the things, the hoodies, all the things that come up in a daily basis. You know, you want to tie the garbage bag and whatnot. What is mutar and what is asur? Now, obviously, we know the basics of this melacha is a person that makes a kesher shel kayama, an lasting knot, lasting kesher, and it's going to be maase uman. It is a sophisticated kesher. It's going to be a isur doraita. Now, the examples the Mishnah gives for this is the knots that the um, the camel drivers, so to speak, used to make. Right, you have to make the way they had it was that they would pierce the wall in between the nostrils of a camel, and the rope in there would be stationary, so to speak, and then the leash would be tied into that loop of a rope that they existed there. So that would be a kasha shakayama would stay there, right? The old um, examples that the time of the Mishnah they they would deal with, and same would be with the kesher of sapanim, the boat drivers, the shipmen, and they would also have like fancy, sophisticated knots that would secure the boat, the ship, um, to the post, whatever they were staying, and that was also sophisticated. Now, sometimes you may open it by this kesher shel gamalim even, right? One of them is the kesher shekayama that we mentioned around the nose, and when they wanted to tie the behemah, the camel, to the post, they would tie a rope to that, and sometimes you'd open it. And this kesher, the second one that you would tie just temporarily to tie the animal to the pole, would be considered kesher she'eno shel kayama. It's not a lasting knot. You tie it, then you untie it afterwards, and so on. Now, same is as we mentioned by the safanim, by the boat and shipment. Hakosher kesher shel kayama ve'eno maaseh uman. If you make a kesher shel kayama, it's everlasting kesher, but it's not maaseh uman. It's a simplistic kesher, like a person that takes a rope. Um, they used to have wells that they drew water from. So how did you do it? You had a rope, and you would tie it to the bucket, and that doesn't need to be necessarily a very sophisticated knot. You just do the double knot, whatever it is, and you throw the bucket into draw water. Um, that type is going to stay for as long as you want it to stay, as long as possible. You don't want it to open. You don't want to lose your bucket, and when the knot opens and the thing falls into the well. Certainly, you don't want that to happen. You want it to be there as long as possible, as strong as possible, but it's not necessarily a sophisticated type of knot. So what's the halacha? הקושר חבל בדליש תלוי בקביעות על פי הפור, והקושר רסן בפי בהמה לקיימה. Same thing with when you make something for the afsar, for the leash of the animal nowadays. Ho'il v'ksharim elu maaseh hediotim. These are maaseh hediot. They're not sophisticated at all. Just a double knot on top of each other, and you tighten it while you stay there for as long as possible. Afal pishem ksharim shel kayama. Even though that you want them for long term, still are only asur midrabanan. So what we're coming out is, in order for something to be a kasher doraita, it has to be both. It has to be a sophisticated kasher, and it also has to be the kasher shekayama that you want it to be for long term. Now, we overly simplified this to say double knot is not kesher shel uman. That by itself happens to be a machloket. We'll get to it, but l'saber ta'ozin, to make this more tangible, we gave examples. certainly if you have one knot and somehow that will be um, tight enough, that would be not a sophisticated kesher. But we'll again get to all of these details in the next few halachot. Now, if you make a kesher that's masa uman, it is sophisticated kesher, but you want to open it right away, right? It's not shel kayama. It also is not asur midoraita. If you plan to open it right away, that would also be fine. Now, there is a fair amount of machloket between the Sephardim and Ashkenazim, Maran and Ramah, when it comes to the details of the ramifications of these halachot of how long does it have to be there to be considered kayama? Is it 7 days? Is it 3 days? Is it one day? Right? But say if you want to open it today. By the way, these make a difference for tying and untying shoes. So even according to those poskim, who this may be questionable, when you have the kavanah that I want to do this, some people don't even tie and untie anymore; they just slip it on. Even that, even those who have lace shoes, they just get comfortable with slipping it in and out. But sometimes when you have to, it's untied and you want to tie it back. So if you say, well, I'm not leaving this forever, I'm going to open it tonight. So that makes a difference than someone that says, I never tie my things. Always tie that. I just slip it on. Now, it got untied because my kid opened it or whatever it is. And now I'm going to just make a nice double bow or whatever it is and just leave it there until Mashiach comes, right? So that obviously is going to be very different. You're making a Kesher Shekayama. We have to discuss all of those details in the upcoming halachot. Now, if you make a Maseh Uman, but is not for long term, it's going to be Darabaran. If it's not Maseh Uman and it's not Shel Kayama, then it's Mutar. Right? Mutar lechatchila lekoshro b'Shabbat. So if it's Kayama and is Maseh Uman, is Doraita. If it's Kayama but not Maseh Uman. Maseh Uman but not Kayama is Isur Midrabanan. And if it is not kayama and not masuma, it's mutar lachatchila. You could make tie, untie. Anything that's mutar to tie, it's mutar to untie as well. Same halacha usually. So if it's none of them, then it's mutar. Kol kesher she'asur lekoshro b'Shabbat asur latiro. Any tie that you cannot, any knot that you cannot make on Shabbat, you can open it either. V'chol kesher she'mutar lekoshro, mutar latiro. And anything that's mutar to tie, to make, it's mutar to also open it. Now, um, what is considered kayama? That's the machloket that we were speaking about. There are those who say kayama is 24 hours, that day. If you make it a knot and you're now opening it tonight, that's already considered a level of kayama. You want this kesher to be there, and that's a problem, right? Umikol makom, because in other words, even if it's not sophisticated kesher, if it's not a kesher uman, still would be asur because we mentioned if it's um, not kesher shel uman, it's not maase uman, it's maase hediot, but it is shel kayama, it's asur midrabanan, right? If it's one but not the other, is asur midrabanan. So if you tell me that one day already is considered kesher shel kayama, any knot would be asur to make on Shabbat, provided that you're not planning to opening it this Shabbat. That would be a massive chumrah, right? Any knot would become a problem if you're leaving it for the day. So you would ask yourself, obviously, right away, if that's the case, I'm really toast when it comes to tying my shoes. How can I tie my shoes if I leave it for the day and it's going to be asu. Kevan, shederech latiru b'motzei Shabbat. Because at the end of the day, the derech is to open it on Motzei Shabbat, so you're not going to go with it for a whole day. So this obviously would say that if you're leaving it there, like those who once in a while they tie their shoe, and the rest of the time they just kind of like slip it on, then you'll be you have to be very very careful to not forget to untie it on Motzei Shabbat. והואיל ואין דרכו להתקיים 24 שעות, once it's not going to be there 24 שעות, 24 hours, it's not considered kesher shkaima. And there are those who disagree with that. Say, no, who said 24 hours? Where do you get that from? Hayama means he has to stay, right? So what's considered staying? 1 week. Shiva Yamim. If you go from 1 week to another week and you're not opening it, that's already like a long period of time. 7 is always like the full cycle. So if you have 7 days that you're not opening it, that's already considered long term. And there are those who disagree, and there are even more Mikhail than that, which we're going to get to that as well. Um, the halacha basically is like 7 days. That's the ikaradin. The ikaradin is a kesher that you are not going to be opening within 7 days. Is going to be kesher shkayma, but one day is not really the end of the world. Now, this would say that if I am tying my Shabbat shoes, right, and um, it's going to stay until next Shabbat because I'm going to just slip it off on Motzei Shabbat, and now I have a nice, beautiful double knot for next Shabbat. So then, obviously, you do it for a whole week. That's going to be a problem, right? Or even your regular shoes. If you are one of those people who ties the shoe and then you know next time you're going to be tying it is next time it unravels automatically or someone messes with it. But otherwise, it's going to be weeks without you opening it. So then, obviously, that's going to be also a problem. But if you're one of those people who every day, every other day opens it, then less than a week, Mikaradu would be a heter, but nevertheless, um, many many are machmir to try to open the knots that they make on Shabbat, even if it's not a sophisticated knot, do it the same day without passing 24 hours to kind of like be yotze all the opinions. Now, there are those who hold שכל קשר שלפעמים הוא נמלח עליו ומבטלו לעולם. Any tie, any knot that you have the possibility of just leaving it there forever, even though that you're not necessarily having kavanah at the time you make the knot that I'm going to leave this forever. But if the possibility is there, they say, you know what, just let it be there, right? even though that you didn't mean to leave it there forever when you made the knot, still, נחשב כאילו הוא קשר שקיימה is considered a type of kesher that's kesher שקיימה, and therefore it's asur to do that on Shabbat, and that also lenient. Now, Obadia holds like the lenient opinion in general in this, but there's this chumrah as well. Again, I'm not sure what the good example for this is. You could have the ribbons on certain garments, clothing that they're just decorative, is not necessarily something that's making something tighter or looser. And you make that one nice thing, and then you hope that this stays there forever. And some people want to open it. So even if you at the time are making that type of knot on the ribbon, you want it to be opened afterwards, so long as it's a type of thing that you may say, you know what, actually I got the perfect ribbon bow here, and just let it be. Then obviously it's going to be a problem. The same would be for making like a gift wrap ribbon. It's a problem even to make it, right? It's a problem to make it because even though that at this moment right now you're thinking, you know what, I'm making this gift wrap ribbon bow, and I'm gonna give it to them. They're gonna open, or I'm gonna open it, or this, the bow on the ribbon, the decorative one of the clothing, and um, they're gonna, next time take it off, gonna open it. If there's possibility that this is gonna just stay there forever and not be opened, then you have that question. Like, if they're not gonna open the ribbon for opening the gift wrap, whatever it is, just gonna I'm not sure if that's a good example necessarily, but sometimes just open it, you pull it off. Certainly by the garment, sometimes it stays there for months and months and months, and you just give up on doing it because you got this perfect bow. So those will be obviously a problem. Um, Even though the Chacham Badia sides with the Mekilim, that so long as your kavana is that you got to open it, it's fine. You could make that knot and that bow on Shabbat. Now we keep on saying bows, and we haven't even discussed whether or not that's considered a kesher shel kayava or not, or kesher shel uman or not. We haven't discussed that. But as far as the timeline, we could discuss whether or not it's considered kesher kayama. Now, yesh omrim shtarich lizaher שלא לקשור בשבת שני קשרים זה על גב זה. There are those who say that making two um, dead knots on top of each other, a double knot, is asur by itself, because that by itself could be considered a kesher uman. Even though that you don't want it lekayama, you want to open it tonight, still will be a problem. Because we don't know what kesher shel uman means. We don't know what sophisticated kesher means. Maybe two knots, one on top of the other, is already considered mase uman, and therefore they stay away from it. Kesher berosh, and if you have one string, imagine the strings of tzitzit. Many people, they don't want this to unravel with laundry or dry cleaners, so they make a little knot on the end, at the end of every string, right? So making that type of knot, even though that is one knot you're making, that has the status of two knots on top of one another when you're dealing with two strings being tied together. So therefore, that would, because it gets tightened to itself very well when you're tying the same string to itself, making that knot, and therefore there are those who say it's asur to do such a thing, and there are those who say it's mutar to do two knots on one another on Shabbat, so long as you don't want to do it lekayama, you're opening it within the day or within 7 days, according to Chacham it will be mutar. אבל להתירו בתוך 7 ימים, וכן המנהג להתיר. Chacham says the minhag is to be matir on two knots on top of one another, but he also recognizes hamachmir tavo alav bracha. This is something that I want you to be machmir lechatchila, says Chacham Ovadia, but mekaradi, there's room to be mekel because the minhag is to be. If it's a needed place, something that you need to do, then don't over extend yourself. Don't be too much. Even according to those who say it's asur to make two knots on one another, the Ramah writes in Shulchan Aruch shemakom sar en lachush. When it's sar, there's no concern. Umutar la'atiram. Imagine your pajamas, you tightened it, or whatever they back then they added it in their pants. They tightened it. That was the belt, so to speak. And by mistake, instead of a bow on top of a knot, became knot on top of knot, and you just tightened nicely. Now the guy can't go to the bathroom. But that's the case discussed in the poskim, right? What are you gonna do? Kavod briot sar. You can open it. The makom sar, the two knots you could be mekel, that they could be opened on Shabbat, because it's only isur drabanan at the most, even if it would be asur. The makom sar lokas drabanan, they did not include that in the isur. Bezat Hashem, we will continue these halachot in the days to come.